Let me tell you a bit more about Kate, and I'll bring her in. She has an extensive background in welfare and community development, has spent the last 3 years getting up to speed with said global narratives, which are shepherding us into a dystopian world of surveillance, where humans, the environment, where we live, what we eat, our genetic code are all being razed to the ground so that we can build back better. She's also a member of Community Voice Australia, which advocates for government and public-private partnership transparency. Kate Mason, welcome back to Weekends and TNT.
Hi, thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Kate. I know that you are flat out as usual, and I don't know how you do it. I've never known a researcher that can get to the bottom of things so quickly, but also be able to understand them and put them into plain English. Might be the reason why you're in demand in the various different speeches and why your videos are so popular. But I know that you made some further discoveries and you've been out on various different speaking agendas out there in the public. Firstly, what's the reaction like when you see people face to face? How are people reacting to the information that you're presenting?
I think, you read lots, so I read a lot of government plans and global body white papers and plans. So you can start to think, oh, everyone must know this because it's really spelt out. So then I get this absolute shock that people are just completely unaware of the bigger picture. So that's interesting to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, isn't it? Because this idea, and this is a more of a philosophical point for people, and I'd like to make this point for our audience and for those that are trying to understand, within this so-called freedom movement, and it does exist, but what actually happens is that what you have in society is you have compliant people, and then you have those that realise that they've been hoodwinked one way or another. It's that one piece of factual information that people twig, the penny drops, and they say, look, that just doesn't add up. And of course, it prompts you to do your own independent research. And when you say you're reading government documents and white papers, it's not like you're reading someone's thought post on Telegram that's uncensored. It's nothing like that. This is real factual information. And so it doesn't take you very long before you realize that these things start to link up. The idea of, a smart city and a central bank digital currency and a digital ID and a social credit score. And all of a sudden, the idea of safety and convenience and a better way to live is replaced by someone controlling every single move that you make. I mean, I just saw today on social media that Upper House MP in New South Wales, John Ruddock, made the comment about surveillance cameras put into new vehicles, which has been coming for some time. Mitsubishi came out with it a few years ago. But the idea, therefore, that you can put a camera into someone's motor vehicle, what's it going to do? Is it going to look at you when you get distracted and send a picture to the police or to some independent civilian finding authority to say that you're not up to speed? What's next? Cameras in the home to determine what you're doing. But this is all laid out in the scripts from 1984 and various other stories of horror that we've seen, Kate. So it doesn't take very long. What was the major development that you'd noticed that you hadn't picked on earlier that you were talking about at these events?
Okay, so I talked to you last time and it was about the New South Wales disaster mitigation plan, which came out at the end of February. And that talks about widespread managed retreat through New South Wales. And widespread managed retreat means that you are removing people, the government can remove you off your land due to climate risk modelling. So, and they talk about mid next year that they will bring out the policy regarding that. And so we'll know more then what that looks like. So, and I just want to recap a little bit because not everyone would have heard that original interview, but there was an act, a New South Wales Reconstruction Authority Act went through in 2022, and that gives the government the ability to take your land off you, compulsorily acquire your land, do what they want with the land and then sell the land. And it goes on to, talk about what disaster means, which I won't go back through again, but people can look back on that. And I do have this information under a Substack, Kate Mason Substack, so people can really look through the details. I've unpacked it and pulled out different aspects of the Act. And then they partner with private corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And then they look at so they've got the side where they're doing the disaster preparation and preparedness, but then also the rebuilding or the building based on climate change modelling to where people will need to live. So it all comes under this Act and a Reconstruction Authority. So that's happened for New South Wales. And I talked to you about that last time. And then after I talked to you about that, I came back to finding the committee for Sydney. And so we're under the 6 cities plan, all the way down from Wollongong up to Newcastle through to the Blue Mountains. And that was released by the New South Wales government to put us under this mega city plan in 2022. Now, in 2018, the Committee for Sydney released a report basically calling for uniting Newcastle, Central Coast, Sydney, Wollongong. So they appear to be the original authors of a government plan that was released. Well, that was released. They look like they're the authors, the real authors, that then the government released the plan, changed things in it, but pretty much a similar plan, and released that 4 years later. So then that looks like, okay, so the Committee for Sydney are really influential in this space. So they released a plan. I'm just going down to it, but and I just want to say, with that one I'm talking about, the plan they released in 2018, they say, thank you to the writers of this plan. And the first one up is a CEO of the Business of Cities on global mega regions. Now, the Business of Cities has a partnership with the World Economic Forum. So we're looking straight away into a global arena that's informing our New South Wales government. And then they released a report last year called it's called Defending Sydney, Adaptive Planning for Today's Flooding and Tomorrow's Climate Risks. So they talk in there about that there's going to need to be prepared to relocate communities due to compounding and severe impacts from climate disasters. And they talk about embedding in the 6 cities region plan. So the Central Coast was going to have a plan this year. And the other regions, I don't know when their plans are coming out. But in that plan, they want to put a high, medium and low climate risk overlay. So they'll put it over I don't know if that'll be for that. I would imagine they've got to break down the towns that live within a region and then give you a climate change risk. And so that will be a number, or however they go about that. And what that means is then you have all the insurance. You and I have spoken before about the 1 in 25 houses in Australia being uninsurable by 2030, the report that came out. So then you've got where they're using the Greater Cities Commission to put these climate rankings on different people's towns, or maybe it's streets. I don't know how far down it will go. And then that will, of course, either mean that your house becomes uninsurable or the housing costs rise. And then we're in that arena there. And as well, they talk about putting a planning certificate on the house. So every house has got its own individualized certificate that says, how much at risk is your home from climate change. And they also discuss that private contractors who own our infrastructure can decide yes or no as to whether or not they're going to keep servicing towns or streets, as well as councils. So they will direct councils, or the New South Wales government will direct councils in this way as to whether or not you keep servicing towns or streets. And with that Defending Sydney report, that was done in partnership with Resilient Sydney. And Resilient Sydney was I'm not sure how much now, but was set up by the Rockefeller Foundation. I think it came into Australia around 2015-ish. And so they came in. So that's all Rockefeller funding. The whole Resilient Cities structure is a partnership with the World Economic Forum as well. So we've got lots and lots of different ways that people are going to be increasingly squeezed. And then we're going to have, where you have to move as well, potentially. And they do make the statement that we all need to pay for disaster resilience and, whatever that's going to look like to make towns more disaster resilient, that's a cost we all have to shoulder. So the vast majority of Australians are already really struggling financially. And once you start to get these extra costs of higher insurance or, different things that are going to happen, having to pay more for council rates, say, for financial, for disaster resilience infrastructure, you're looking at a position where it's becoming untenable for a huge amount of people to keep their houses, basically. And just one last thing with them, they also talk about moving whole towns or streets together and they make out this is about communities. So they say, individualized approaches to relocation move people out of high-risk areas. This reduces social capital and cohesion of those who are left behind. or those who leave. They want a more collective and planned movement retreat, which reduces risk while maintaining social cohesion to a community. So they're looking at widespread, they're looking at moving either streets or towns of people together.
You know, it's interesting the way that they've gone about this approach. So they're telling us all about managed retreat, and then they're saying that somewhere down the track we're going to announce which areas are the ones that we're going to have to move. It's almost like they've come up with the idea, and then they're going to try and fit the pieces of the puzzle together. And of course, they come back and give you the idea about social capital. So yet again, other ideas of propaganda have been researched so that we're going to justify what we're going to do, because we've always got our hearts in the right place for the people, who, by the way, are being run out of town literally by insurance premiums that will be forced to go up simply because the government says that there's a new risk involved. Of course, we haven't been able to plot a millimetre of height difference in the oceans, Kate. So how is it that they're going to be able to tell us, or is this because of the floods in the Northern Rivers region is a justification that this is so-called part of climate change?
They've got a matrix, so they've put together, they've looked at about 6 or 7 different things in the New South Wales disaster mitigation plan. So Central Coast is number 1 out of all the local government areas in the whole of New South Wales to be the most at risk of climate change. So we're in that position, but they look at flooding, they look at sea level rise, they look at bushfires, and they rank your local government area to how much at risk you are, and then they compound all of those together. So yes, that's a whole nother task to go through that and track what modelling are they using, what's their data they're using to put in each of those categories. That's something that, see, this is what I'm really hoping, is that people start to do this, okay, so there's a couple of things here. The Committee for Sydney, if you just look at their partners, it's Amazon, it's the big 4 consultancy firms, it's really, really big players. And you have to then ask, okay, so are these guys going to benefit in any way? Is there a benefit to them? How much do you trust them based on what they've done in other countries? What they've actually done. Are you going to just trust it, or are you going to start to question it and really start to hone down on what's the data they're using? How could they misuse this?
Now, what's interesting is the way that this is being played out, because it's very hard for the average citizen to write to perhaps their local state MP at the very least, or even their federal MP, and ask them the appropriate questions to get indeed a response. If you wrote to your MP today, Kate, what kind of response would you expect to get if you brought up this idea of managed retreat?
Look, I don't know. Every time we write to our local MPs, because I do quite a lot, it takes months and months to get a response, and it doesn't answer the question I asked. So I get the generic response to something where I'm actually trying to work out different things within that. I'm asking specific questions. So right now I've got a question into 3 local MPs because the Greater Cities Commission was dissolved, but it looks like to me it was dissolved just into, it reads as though it's dissolved into just different state departments, which in a way, but I'm asking, are you still under the same act, that was created? Simple questions that they should know. And it can take up to 8 weeks to get a response, because it all has to get sent over to, the MP that's in charge of it. And then that can take 8 weeks, and he might come back and not answer my question. And so you're in this position where you just cannot get clarity. And this is what actually incenses me. Why? Because I'm trying to look bigger picture. How are all these little pieces of the puzzle coming together? Why doesn't the government just spell it out? This is the plan. This is where we're taking you to by 2050. We want you in these sorts of resilient housing, structures, smart cities, the land, all the things that you can see, but you only can see it if you look over at this plan, this act, and spend all this time trying to piece this together. Why are they not being transparent regarding the bigger picture of where they're taking us?
And this is the whole point, isn't it, of Community Voice Australia, advocating for government and public-private partnership transparency. This is entirely what your work is about, Kate.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not okay. It's not okay to get people to agree to this little bit over here and that little bit over there and this incremental thing here, and where people don't actually know where it's heading. And we have the right to know where it's heading. At least tell us where you're taking us, So that's what really gets me. So
No, Absolutely. Now, what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more. We're talking to Kate Mason about managed retreat in this smart city approach, trying to dig deep and get the facts where not even your local politician is even willing to get an answer. It seems that they are also in the dark, and it seems that today authority is just all about looking the other way at the exact right time. And what we can't work out is how it is that they don't seem to have any sort of interest or even empathy with the obvious questions of being able to be just moved into another realm at the stroke of a pen because some globalist idealist wants to change the world in his or her own image. Let's take the break and we'll be back with more here on Weekends. You're watching and listening to TNT. Welcome back to Weekends. My guest this hour, Kate Mason, and we are talking about managed retreat as it is being proposed in white papers here in New South Wales, Australia. And of course, it's just one corner of the world that Kate's research is second to none in the area. Kate, where would you like to go next?
Just to make people aware, so we've got 1 year basically, or 1 year and 3 months before the New South Wales policy will come out and manage retreat. So we're already starting to see, I'll go on to an ABC article that came out yesterday regarding this, but what they're going to do is they're going to bring in workshops into local communities, and it'll be called resilience or preparation workshops, or, so I want people to get that, disaster resilience building workshops. So I want to get that on people's radar. So they're going to come in and they're going to it's sort of to create social license so they can say, we consulted the community and this is what they want. It might look really lovely on the surface and there'll be some really genuine people involved in it. I'm not saying, and it might just sound like we've got to look after our neighbours sort of thing, but I want people to be aware of the bigger picture and do some research regarding where this is actually heading, because you won't be told that. And it will be a way. So it's actually an opportunity, if people get ready for it, to go in there and be able to raise concerns and not allow your voice to be silenced and siloed into a particular, what they want us, because they're very good at constructing these workshops in a way that you end up just saying exactly what they want you to say. There's a whole methodology behind it. So yeah, people need to actually go in prepared to these, to raise questions, to raise concerns, to raise the implications, and put a bigger picture on the table there where the community actually may not be involved. It's a very good opportunity to get the word out. Yesterday, the ABC put out an article saying Australians fear climate disasters will force them away from place they live, new survey finds. 1 in 3 Australians are worried extreme weather will force them to permanently leave their homes, a survey by the Climate Council has found. And then it goes on about rising insurance premiums, due to the point of unaffordability were also a big concerns. So then again, what's next? Community resilient experts say people need practical solutions to deal with these escalating disasters, and that NRMA Insurance and Suncorp Group announced they'll provide discounts to households using a particular assessment for bushfires to make their homes more resilient to bushfires. So that's similar to how you were talking at the beginning about having cameras in cars, because that's also something they're talking about. If you allow the insurance company to track how you drive, where you drive, you can get potentially lower insurance costs. So this would be another way that you need to be sort of everything you're doing in your home needs to be tracked and traced. It'll be tied to, having a lesser amount of insurance. So it's just becoming more and more controlled, basically. So that's all happening. And they also said community preparedness was one of the few positives to come out of the Climate Council survey, with 76% of respondents saying they had some degree of confidence in their community's preparedness for future climate-related disasters. So this is all like, these surveys come out. No one I've ever known's ever been surveyed. I've never been surveyed, yet now 1 in 3 Australians feel like this, that they're already really frightened. So please, government, please come in with your public-private partnerships, and do something and help us, basically.
It just sounds like, doesn't it, that this particular organisation goes out and surveys 20 people from the office, and 7 of them say that they're scared because they were just fed into a lecture that told them that they need to be scared, and that's how we'll get our survey results. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. It seems that we are always being manipulated. Again, there wouldn't be a TNT radio listener that is doubting the climate change narrative at this point, and so it is that the climate change TNT scrutineer as it were, is the type of person that needs to be able to attend one of these particular events, Kate, and get out there and at least report on their own social media platforms what's actually being asked. Are there certain questions that you would recommend that people would ask at one of these resilience workshops, such as who is going to determine insurance policy? Will the insurance companies act in a way like private banks in a CBDC world and determine how we're going to spend our money, how it is that we're going to have to insure our property for this phantom idea? What do you recommend?
Oh, I think well, for me, because I'm always really looking at funders, and then I look at the other programs that they're involved in behind things. So I think there's a whole bunch to raise, because what I think they're going to do, I mean, I think people should get really clear about what it's going to cost them. What are the costs to this? What are the actual disaster mitigation policies that are going to get brought in? What's the cost? What's the modelling? What if we disagree with the modelling? What are our options with that? I think that I actually really do want to work on this in the next month or so to put together a bit of a kit around this. So I will spend more time around this, but I do think people do need to understand a bit of the bigger context. So I would be going more on, well, what's going to happen, because the other aspect to this that really troubles me is the natural asset market that's going to be created. So not that I have found them, well, they do refer to this quite a bit, that natural asset markets are really important in this whole scenario. So you got your government coming in, compulsorily acquiring your land, can do what it wants with your land and then on-sell it. I see that on-selling it is going to be to private corporations to either, to do the rewilding and then to claim carbon credits, to trade ecosystem services on the stock market, which is Rockefeller is angling for. And so, yeah, you've got this sort of market that they're creating, biodiversity market, and the Australian government's very, very busy passing legislation, creating plans to allow these markets to happen. So basically then you've got this whole level of corporate ownership over the nature and the natural world. So you're basically been pushed out of your house to allow, these markets to emerge from the land that you're on. And I think that's a very, very flawed and disingenuous model. And the Climate Council of Australia, who has been putting out these, a number of these plans, the 1 in 25 homes uninsurable, Michael West did an article on them and said 4 out of the 6, this was last year, 4 out of 6 Climate Council board members are involved with the climate market. Sorry, not with the climate market, with the carbon market. So you've got people, that are really going to benefit from, being able to come in and be involved in these markets. So, which I think is a conflict of interest. So all of that, I think, needs unpacking and understanding, and I'll keep working on that because it's really complicated, and the government's, passing legislation every 5 seconds, and to really understand it, you've got to really scrutinise it. So, yeah, but they've also brought out another report, Community Sydney, about the rising costs of heat waves to Western Sydney that came out last week. So talking about 20 days, that potential 20 days over 35 degrees in Western Sydney is the issue. And that only 10 days a year at the moment are over 35 degrees. And I would imagine it's a lot more than that with the Western Sydney area. It regularly gets up to 40 degrees.
What a strange comparison. It's almost like we'll just invent the statistics, like somehow 35 degrees in Australia in summer is hot.
I know.
I mean, we've seen posts on social media charting way back, 60 or 70 years explaining the heat waves, and it's never changed. It's always been hot in certain parts of the country. It's just where you have built up areas that you might get an adjustment in that. So that's a devastating sort of statistic that they're just going to come out there and manipulate us. I've seen posts saying things like it's extreme weather. It's 31 degrees. It's not extreme weather. It's a warm day in Australia in summer. It's not even a hot day. I remember watching the weather on the news as a kid, and when it was 31 degrees, it would say, warm, or it would say 28 or 26 would be mild. Now we're told that 26 is a heat wave on certain days. It's just that manipulation. Of course, we've seen weather maps where they paint everything red and pretend that the whole country's burning down. And of course, nothing can be further from the truth. I just want to go back briefly to that point you made earlier about land being sold off, and the implication there that it's going to be these corporate slash government quasi organisations that are going to pick this up for either rewilding or some other thing. And I'm just picturing the Central Coast, Kate, so a beautiful area with, you know, lots of beaches, coastline, etc. But you've also got a lot of hill and mountainous areas. So what are they planning on doing? Moving everyone from sea level back a certain distance and just what, rewilding those areas and letting everyone live in the mountains around the coast, or they just want to close it down completely? I mean, how can they even justify even having thoughts like this without any form of community consultation? We're just going to come up with an idea, hold some resilience meetings that will hide in a town hall somewhere, and then come up with a big bold plan and move everyone out.
Yeah, well, they don't actually say about, they haven't spelt out the whole natural asset thing, except they do talk about, they do in one way, but they're not saying we're going to move people and then use your land for natural asset, you know, markets. However, I think that from everything I'm reading, because they're not going to say that, that wouldn't go down very well at this point in this incremental point. So that is my own theory. Because I think, how do you do that? If you're going to sell, if you're going to move people off beautiful land, you know, coastal land, you can't just sell it to massive corporates who are going to live in it, you know, or corporate entities, or, you know, going to use it for a hotel like that. People will absolutely, they do need to shepherd people along into this. So I think the way they will do it is say, you know, either we need to sell it off to be able to repay for some of the disaster, you know, resilience infrastructure we're putting in, or they'll really just talk about rewilding and the importance of rewilding. So the markets have been set up, the legislation's there. It's just a matter of being able to bring this in this way. I mean, they're already going to do it for the national parks and the state forests and the Indigenous land. Like, I think it's 72% of Australia will be in land council, owned by land councils by 2030, and one of their markets is the natural asset market. So they're already doing that, but I just assume, and I'm thinking that will also happen to people's private property as they're moved out. It will be rewilded, but owned by corporate entities.
It's frightening. You have to think at this point what the resistance would be. It's one thing to be forced to, you know, say, "I'll just take this tiny little drop at the end of a needle so you can go to the pub," but it's something else to say, "We're going to force you out of your home. You're going to have to sell it to us compulsorily acquired at a price that we determined," which you can be rest assured that no one will be happy with. Also, I mean, how many virtue signalling property owners do you think there really are, Kate, at this point?
I think, well, it depends how much they scare people. And I think the hard thing's going to be is that they actually come into the communities and run these workshops. Unless people are really well organised and it will turn people against each other. And then you've actually got, if you looked at anything like what people experienced through COVID and the amount of vitriol and nastiness and othering that happened, imagine if you're in an area with a lot of, you know, climate change experts. I mean, imagine you're actually living, you're trying to sort things out in the particular town you're in. So I think that there could be a really big potential for, I don't know what you call it, just really nasty stuff going on. But maybe not if people get organised enough and actually go in and really make a valid argument, you know, not go and scream and yell, actually make a valid argument and do some research beforehand. So that, yeah, and I did want to just quickly, I know I've only got 2 minutes, but I did want to spell out one of the templates for what, so, and I think I've talked to you about this before, but NEOM in Saudi Arabia is this massive smart city complex that's being built. And it's not that I'm saying Australia is going to be like this, but I think the model is important to look at because I think the model is similar. So, and the climate, and what are they called? Smart City Australia references this NEOM project. So it's, you know, referenced in our documents in Australia, but it's going to be a cognitive city, 500 metres above sea level. It's only 200 metres wide and it has no roads, cars. It runs on 100% renewable. 95% of the land will be preserved for nature. And that's why it's environmental, because we're not on, then people won't be in nature. It will accommodate 9 million people and will be built on a footprint of just 34 square kilometres. So that's the sort of, this is the, you know, the state of the art model. And then so a cognitive city is basically where it's got the technology everything's automated And then learning processes are added to the underlying systems of the city, which allows, so you basically, all your data is being collected, the past behavior of the user, and then the environment is changed according to that. So it's always collecting data on it. Data is provided by the citizens, and by subsequently analysing them, both citizens and the city profit from this continuous interaction as well as the ongoing learning process. So you're in this sort of hive mind, you know, where you're all taking part in some sort of gamification or some sort of bizarre, I mean, it's very dystopian. I find it hard to get my head around, but they talk about collective intelligence, you know, within that city. So you're sort of all hooked up into this data sharing, you know, thing that they'll probably just feed it to us as democracy. But then they also have, in that city, they have a food section, and this is redefining food production, distribution and consumption, sustainable and innovative food solutions, climate-proof agriculture, novel foods, personalised nutrition, sustainable food supply. So synthetic food, absolutely synthetic food. And that is basically, that'll be on the outskirts, and then you get fed your mush, which you probably put through, you know, your 3D printer at home to resemble something. So this is very much the model.
It's extraordinary. And
I mean, I'm not saying Australia's going to get there quickly. This is going to take a long time, I think. But I think this is the model.
And what's extraordinary here is that what are we seeing in Gaza, the razing of a city to the ground? It almost feels like that they can copy the Saudi Arabian model and just drop it straight on top. What we're seeing in Lahaina, in Maui, something similar again. We can just drop this plan straight on top. There it is, that the people over there struggling to sell their land after the fire, nowhere really to go. And it just seems that the government is now a nuisance and a problem rather than the solution. Kate Mason, I want to thank you for your time on the show again, and your support of this show and our channel with the incredible work that you're doing. Just quickly, before you go, what's the Substack address again?
I don't know, but if you just search Kate Mason Substack, it comes up.
Perfect. So I encourage everyone to check that out. It's very, very important. Kate Mason, thank you very much. We're going to go to the news, and when we come back, Brian McWilliams will be on the other side. We're going to head over to the US for the latest in the battle towards potentially, goodness me, 2024 election. You're watching and listening to TNT.